This is Daily Armenia, ＳivilNet's daily news digest. Here's what's making headlines in Armenia today. The European Parliament adopted a resolution yesterday condemning human rights abuses and international law violations by Azerbaijan and calling for sanctions against Azerbaijani officials, while also urging the EU to stop relying on Azerbaijani gas supplies, pointing out that Baku resells Russian gas to Europe to help Moscow circumvent EU sanctions. The resolution reaffirms the European Parliament's support for normalizing Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, stressing that this process must respect each country's territorial integrity based on the 1991 Alma-Ata Declaration. Additionally, it demands that Azerbaijan fully withdraw from Armenia's sovereign territories and respect Armenia's sovereignty in all regional matters, stating that the EU should be prepared to impose sanctions on any entity threatening Armenia's independence or integrity. The European Parliament emphasized that the future EU-Azerbaijan partnership requires Azerbaijan to improve its human rights record and demonstrate genuine engagement in peace talks with Armenia. The resolution also urges the EU to stop relying on Azerbaijani gas and scrutinizes concerns may include supplies of Russian origin. In further calls, the European Parliament requests sanctions on Azerbaijani officials responsible for human rights violations and urges restricting these officials' access to EU facilities, while also stressing the importance of the EU monitoring mission and calling for its mandate's expansion and extension. In addition, the resolution calls for reassessing Azerbaijan's suitability to host COP29 due to its poor human rights record. It highlights restrictions on press freedom, unresolved cases in the European Court of Human Rights, the presence of political prisoners, and reports of Azerbaijani attempts to bribe officials within the EU. The Azerbaijani parliament responded to the resolution today, accusing the European Union of interfering with Baku's internal affairs and describing the resolution as one that contains, quote, absurd statements, accusations, threats, and demands based on false information, end of quote. Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev discussed bilateral normalization agenda during a rare meeting yesterday in Russia's city of Kazan that hosts a BRICS summit these days, according to Pashinyan's spokesperson Nazali Baghdassaryan. The foreign ministers were instructed to continue bilateral negotiations on the peace agreement in order to finalize and conclude it as soon as possible, Baghdassaryan reported. Aliyev's office posted the same statement yesterday. Also during yesterday's roundtable discussion, Russian President Vladimir Putin praised the Armenia-Azerbaijan border demarcation talks, calling them an important step on the path toward normalization. In his speech, Prime Minister Pashinyan once again urged Azerbaijan to sign the normalization deal, temporarily excluding the provisions that have yet to be agreed upon. Repsime Grigoryan, a parliament member representing the ruling Civil Contract Party, told reporters at a press briefing today that the only reason the normalization deal is still not signed is the lack of political will in Azerbaijan. Armenia's position remains unchanged. We are ready to sign, she said. President Vahagn Khachaturyan signed Armenia's protocol for the Armenia-Azerbaijan border delimitation yesterday, finalizing legislation approved earlier this week by Parliament with a 67-vote majority, in the absence of opposition members who boycotted the vote, claiming the protocol undermines Armenia's national interests. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev also signed the protocol today. According to Azerbaijani media, the protocol outlines a framework for delimiting the Armenia-Azerbaijan border, referencing the 1991 Alma-Ata Declaration as its guiding principle but lacks specific maps. According to the declaration signed both by Yerevan and Baku, the former border between Soviet Armenia and Soviet Azerbaijan should become an international border without any changes. Armenia's Constitutional Court confirmed the protocol's compliance with the Armenian constitution last month. The border demarcation between Armenia and Azerbaijan started in April, resulting in Armenia handing over 4 abandoned Azerbaijani villages that it controlled since the early 1990s, while Baku withdrew its troops stationed near Berkaber, a village on the Armenian side of the border. You can also watch the latest edition of ＳիվիլNet's Weekly Insights series. In this episode, host Eric Hakopian spoke about 3 critical developments shaping Armenia's security landscape, including the issue of non-combat deaths and increased defense expenditures projected in next year's budget. You can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel or by following the link in the video description below. And as always, please follow ＳivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.